Earwig. No way!
Inside a freezing furnace, coated ash from head to toe. Bare feet are chapped, got a love that she doesn't know. How long she'll have to.
Hi, and welcome to Seriously Pointless Conversations about Culture. Your seriously pointless conversations about all your nerdy and geek things throughout time and across the magical orphanages of England. That's right. You can thank Jackie for that intro today, guys. Today, we're going to be talking about the newest animated movie from Studio Ghibli, Earwig and the Witch. Jackie, how are you doing today? Yay!
I'm good. I'm doing well.
You're doing good? Yeah. So at the time of this episode, we're getting really close to the new baby, aren't we? We're getting really, really close, aren't we? Yeah. So it's countdown, maybe less than a week. That's what we're looking at. So I'm gonna props off to you for actually coming out and helping me out with this, because I probably would not have done it in your shoes, but you're a better person than I am. So
Well, flattery. Thank you.
I do my best. So anyway, so what else have you been up to?
Just reading Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
I finished The Hobbit. Now I'm on to Lord of the Rings.
Are you liking it pretty
Very
good?
much so. I'm glad I'm rereading it, because when I read it as a middle schooler, I didn't really appreciate it, and now I enjoy it a lot more than I remember.
So I know, so we have been actually watching the extended version along with, while you're reading it as well.
Mhm.
Do you see a lot of comparisons, similarities, things like that? Which do you prefer right now at this
The
point?
book.
Obviously.
I mean, I like the film is wonderful, but I definitely prefer the book for the detail.
Well, like a lot of things, I think that film adaptation kind of it's more fun, in my opinion, because film adaptations takes away all the guesswork. Because like in books, it leaves your imagination up to a little bit more, and your brain kind of fills in the blanks, and kind of it's a little more fun, I feel.
Mhm.
But that's just me, though. But yeah,
And speaking of that, this movie is based on a book, right?
it is. So
By
yeah.
Diana Wynne Jones.
So that is the same lady that wrote the Howl's Moving Castle. Yeah, which
I've read, and
how did you feel about that?
I did not really like the book, to be honest. That is one of the very, very few exceptions where I prefer the movie over the book, because I think what Hayao Miyazaki did in that film expanded so much and almost created a new world out of the framework that he was given from the book. And maybe I'm not British, so I didn't get the humor. It was a very strange juxtaposition of a fantasy world, but then mixed with our world. And it's another book. I would read it again to give it a shot, but I was pretty disappointed.
Yeah, it happened. But I mean, it can't be all that bad when people like Neil Gaiman think that she's a national treasure.
Yeah, and a lot of people really laud her work, but so far the only thing I've read by her was Howl's Moving Castle. It was just not my thing.
Just didn't connect.
I read it later in my later high school years, so I was older.
And it might have been more of a children's type novel, or maybe a teenager type novel, and you just might have been kind of phasing out of that a little bit.
Yeah,
who knows?
I'd give it another shot, but
just to see what it's like. But at the very minimum, we love that movie, though.
The movie is
phenomenal. So that's kind of one of those things is that Studio Ghibli kind of does is they took a few liberties, but they kept a lot of the source material. But they did change.
They changed a lot.
They did change a lot, but
the book is very different from the film.
But they kept a lot of the main characters and things like that. So, like I said, that's with them, and I think they kind of did this a little bit in this film, in Earwig, and I think that's kind of, without spoiling too much, I think it's kind of where I think they dropped the ball a little bit. But anyway, before we get into that, I don't know if you've been noticing. So, like we said earlier, I was actually watching Lord of the Rings, the extended versions with you. On top of that, I've actually been watching The Irregulars on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen this or not. It's kind of a weird Victorian sci-fi kind of thing. It's fun. I'm enjoying it so far. I'm about 6 episodes in. I actually binged quite a bit of it last night, and I've been pleasantly surprised, to say the least, guys. So if you have not checked this out, check it out. It's it's the better of the two. There's another one called The Nevers, which is by Joss Whedon. He wrote and directed it, and it's on HBO. It's not as good, in my opinion. I like The Irregulars a little bit more, but it's a little bit kind of a teen fantasy kind of thing going on there. But talking about misfires today, I think let's get into.
I
know.
Get back into the.
I know. Get
the
back.
Story or lack thereof.
Yeah. So let's get. Let's start with the beginnings of Earwig. So Earwig and the Witch, or Aya and the Witch, which is the Japanese, is a Japanese computer animated fantasy film which is CGI'd and is directed by Gorō Miyazaki, who is Hayao's son. And it's based on the novel of the same name by Diane Wynne Jones. The original voice cast included Shinobu Terajima, Etsui Toyokaya, Gaku Haranada, and Kokoro Hirasawa. Yeah, I was trying to be slow and methodical.
For you.
I was doing better because between you and James, I get dirty looks every time I try to do Japanese or like Asian names or like, and I took my time and actually researched those names a little bit, so I think I kind of got it better. So the film was actually was a co-production between Studio Ghibli and NHK and NHK Enterprises. The film was originally aired on television on December 30th, 2020. So NHK is actually a Japanese television studio. That's what they do. So they actually aired it on there first, and then it was scheduled to release by Toho production company. Pushed it out in April 29th of 2021 before it was released.
Well, that was the plan
everywhere.
They wanted to release it in theaters, right?
Yeah.
But they had to postpone it because of COVID.
Yeah, it was a huge pandemic kind of like mess up because people had to do a lot of stuff from home. And like a lot of stuff in 2020, it got the scheduling stuff got pushed back and moved around. And I think that also kind of affected it a little bit from what I've gathered. They're kind of staying tight-lipped about this. From the few of the interviews that I've read and watched, they really just kind of said, well, maybe we just misfired a little bit. They don't really go into explanations like a lot of Japanese business people. They just kind of try to move past their misfires and try to do better. They don't dwell on it, which is it's healthy.
I think that's better than just saying I suck, because it's one thing to admit your mistake, and it's one thing to just like go over and over again, like, well, that sucked and that was bad, and blah blah blah. So.
Well, that's the one downside about interviews and things like that is they pretty much always ask the same questions over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they kind of probably got tired of talking about it, and they're like, we're going to move on for this. But on the plus side, though, I think this was one of the first films that Hayao actually kind of supported his son, Gorō, from what I've gathered, pretty readily. They're kind of like, because, so from what I was gathering, so this is the first fully 3D CGI or CG'd animated film by Studio Ghibli. In the past, they've done things like working in a little bit of CG here, but it's always been it's always been predominantly 2D painted, either painted or hand drawn. And so because that's Hayao Miyazaki has been a huge proponent, and these are like old school animators that work at Studio Ghibli.
That's what I prefer.
Which
honestly,
yeah, and so whenever they finally said, "Hey, Gorō came up and he'd done some other things. He'd done like Tales of Earthsea through Studio Ghibli, which is another little less received film from them." He
do Ponyo, or he was very highly involved.
He was highly involved in it, and so I think that's kind of where they're like, "Hey," because he was part of the production team on that. And he also did a lot of the set designs, kind of like trying to set up storyboards and things like that. He helped his dad a little bit with that. But in this one, he basically brought this idea to Studio Ghibli, and he was like, "Hey, I want to make this film because it's by by an author that did another book that you guys have already done, and I want to adapt it to a film, but I want to make it my way." And he kind of pitched the idea, and Hayao basically said, "Just do it. You guys just do it. Don't worry about asking any of the older guys about their opinions." And the older guys goes, because I think Hayao kind of has finally come to the realization a little bit. He goes, "I'm not going to be around forever, and we kind of need to start stepping into the future a little bit." but he goes, I want somebody different than anybody else that has been here that's got their feet firmly planted in Studio Ghibli to kind of like start that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well,
do you feel that from this a little bit?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't care for the movie, but I like the fact that Gorō was trying to do something on his own.
Yeah.
And I think that he needs to separate from his father, like big time, because I think he trying to emulate what his dad does. He's
can't.
not the same person, and
No.
he shouldn't be. And I think that I like the film for that, the fact that he tried something different,
Mhm.
like he tried full CG. I wish, though, he would have made the characters look even different. Like to try and...
They're definitely Studio Ghibli characters, just looking at them.
But just, they look 3D. But I wish he would have gone even further personally. And, like, if you're gonna go out on your own, do it. Like, just do completely you and figure out, like, what is your style. And I think he was still trying to hold on to tradition and his dad's style.
That's the hard thing, right? I mean, it'd be kind of like a Walt Disney kid trying to be an animator after their dad's created this empire. I mean, it's essentially the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's like any kid that comes in and kind of takes
to film.
They choose to fill those big shoes, and it's a hard thing to do. So when he gets into there, Hayao kind of basically says, just do what you want, go full steam ahead. So whenever he starts, he basically talks to a lot of the younger staff that are at the studio. He doesn't talk to any of the older staff that have been there for a while, and he primarily focuses on using them to help work on the project. And so the thing he always kind of talked about in some of the interviews he did was no one except for him has really at the studio has ever handled CG animation. So he kind of had to teach some of the younger staff to how to do this. And it can show a little bit, it shows a little bit. This is their freshman try of trying to move into a different animation style a little bit. So, but as he moves along, he does hit a few things that I think I enjoyed a little bit. Like the music in this was pretty decent.
Yeah, I enjoyed the music.
Yeah, which it's very music centric. The whole thing. And I think that's another thing he tried to do that was different from his dad a little bit, because Dad does a lot of musical scores are very heavy. They set emotional tones and things like that in his movies. In this, he
didn't really see that as much.
He didn't do that as much, but he was trying. I could tell he was trying to do more of a more modern take on that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And he definitely pushed with more of like a rock and roll type thing. Yeah.
I wish that would be my biggest critique of this movie, is I wish he had done more, pushed even more on that, because the song, the Don't Disturb Me song, that's like the theme, they just repeat that over and over again. I wish they could have expanded.
Or had multiple different songs.
Yeah, multiple songs from that band, because as far as I'm concerned, the band Earwig and the Witch, or just Earwig was the name of the band, that's their only song.
Yep.
Like one hit wonder. And I think that he could have expanded more on that.
So I know we've been kind of talking a little bit. We've been kind of bashing the production and the development of it a little bit.
I mean,
so
it's not without merit. Like,
no, it is definitely not. So tell me what the actual movie is about. So this is
the plot.
So from this point on, guys, we're going to do spoilers, because this is pretty much the whole movie is only like an hour and a half.
It was short.
Yeah, hour and 20 minutes. It's a very short film, which is pretty typical in most Japanese films.
But the plot.
Go and do the plot. Yeah.
Well, so it's I'm going to cheat from your notes, but I could summarize it pretty well. It's the 1990s in England, and we see a witch on a motorcycle with a baby. You don't realize that till later, but she ends up on the doorstep of basically an orphanage, St. Morwald's Home for Children. I didn't catch the name of it in the film, but basically like an orphanage.
Yeah. And
she's telling her daughter, like, oh, you'll be happy here. They make the best shepherd's pie or whatever. So you can kind of assume that she was there at one point. But she leaves the baby on the doorstep with a note that her name is Earwig. The matron finds the baby, and she says, well, Earwig is an awful name. We're going to change it to Erica Wig. She's Erica now. And so they take her in. Then, they jump forward to the future. Earwig's like 10 years old. She's got these crazy pigtails. She's very sassy, very sassy. And she basically runs the orphanage. Everybody does what she wants. She enjoys living there. It's her home. She has her goofy friend Custard, little blonde boy that is like her little servant, but follows her around. And you kind of see them have a couple adventures, but then one day, this strange couple, Bella Yaga and the Mandrake, come and they adopt Earwig. She doesn't want to be adopted, but they adopt her anyway. Take her to their house, and Bella Yaga reveals that she's a witch, and she only got Earwig because she wanted an extra pair of hands.
A
And Earwig
slave,
says,
apparently.
Yeah, Earwig is like, well, I will help you, but you are going to teach me magic. So she's trying her, I'm going to run the show again, and it doesn't really work out initially.
Definitely does not work.
No, she tries to escape. It doesn't work out. She can't get out of the house. It's been magically sealed. But then she, Bella Yaga won't teach her magic. The Mandrake kind of ignores her. And she finds all these old records from the band Earwig and listens to those. So she's got that going on. But then she finds out the cat Thomas can talk, the familiar. And then they basically make a spell to protect them from magic so that
It's
they
like
can...
goo.
Yeah, they slather themselves in this goo, and then that way Bella Yaga can't punish them.
It's pretty funny, actually.
And Earwig tries to figure out spells on her own, and she does cast a curse on Bella Yaga to give her an extra pair of hands literally on her body. I think one's on her rear and one's on her nose.
Yeah.
Little arms.
It's pretty funny, yeah.
And Bella Yaga's furious, of course, and then summons like magical worms, and
I'll give you worms.
Yeah, that's always her threat, is she's going to give her worms. And so she like gives her the worms, and the cat is freaking out because he's like, oh, this is bad. And they don't affect Earwig, but she pokes a hole in her room, like the wall, and it connects to the Mandrake's room, and she shoves all the worms in there, and then he like loses his ever-loving mind.
So like this whole house is just magical, and so like the other rooms that she thinks she's like shoving them into the bathroom, but it's actually going into the Mandrake's.
Yeah, I think she knows kind of what she's doing.
Kind of, yeah.
Because she's peered in that hole and seen the Mandrake on his organ playing.
Yeah.
And he's a whole weird character in and of himself. Bella Yaga is just kind of a fat, angry witch with blue hair, but the Mandrake you think is he even human? Like, I feel like he's a demon.
He's definitely a demon.
He's like this super tall guy with these big elf ears.
Yeah, he's definitely a demon.
Crazy eyes. But and then kind of like after that whole...
They have a weird jump?
Yeah, they have a weird jump. After that whole like scenario, I'm trying to remember what exactly happens, but it doesn't seem like it's much time before then you see... it's kind of like in this beautiful bed and like has this.
Well, so like Earwig, she kind of becomes friends with the Mandrake, and the Mandrake basically kind of tells Bella Yaga that they're gonna get her shit together, basically, and like you're gonna help her.
You're gonna teach her to be a witch.
Don't quit being a jerk, essentially.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're gonna get along, and Bella Yaga eventually, I think she kind of like.
Well, she warms up, and
eventually warms up to.
But you don't really see that development. It's just kind of an instant switch where they're bringing her like breakfast in bed, or the little demons that work for the Mandrake are serving her mistress. Now. Yeah, and so like
these little wind demons.
Yeah, she's back in her element of she's the queen again, and everybody's doing what she wants.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of ends on Christmas.
Like they're there, and
do you want me to spoil
her buddy Custard is there. Visit. Custard is visiting.
She gets to go back to school, she gets to see him at school.
Big spoiler.
Her mom shows up then.
Yeah,
and then that's
just
like
randomly.
The end of the movie. Yeah, her mom's at the gate with Custard, and then they open the door, and Earwig's like, "Oh, hello," but she doesn't recognize her, and the mom's like, "Earwig," and you found out that the mom was in the band with Bella Yaga and the Mandrake. They were all together at one point, but then they had a falling out. And
Bella Yaga was way smaller
Yeah,
than.
she was a lot skinnier. And they don't like explain any of that. It just kind of ends really, really abruptly.
Yeah.
I just feel like when it ended, we both looked at each other like, "Wait, that's it."
WTF? You know, like,
Like, what?
is that it? Yeah. Like, are we not getting anything else out of this? So, like, I think that was the biggest letdown for me throughout this whole thing was like, why did it just randomly stop, and like why was this? It almost feels like they were in the middle of trying to move the story along and they didn't have any material, or they wanted to cut time or something like that, and they're like, oh, we're gonna cut this right here because it's convenient, and then we're gonna really rush the end.
Like the ending was way too rushed, and
Yeah.
it just felt like. I mean, I finally got over the animation. Like, it just bothered me. I wish we had seen it in Japanese. I feel like the dubbing, like the voices would have matched better with the mouth movements, because that was something
that kind of bothered me a little bit too.
It
yeah,
really bothered me. Like, I couldn't watch their faces.
It was visibly off. It was not the level of Studio Ghibli, Disney, like.
No, and
dubbing.
even like, because I've watched a lot of Pixar films in Spanish, and it's flawless. Like, you can tell they put a lot of effort into making the dialogue match with the mouth movements. In this film, it just felt like they half-assed that.
Well, from we'll get into it a little bit later, I think their budget was significantly less than like a lot of the other like Studio Ghibli movies. I think they were just giving him enough money to try the project to see how well he did. And I think it's probably it was a smart thing on their end, honestly. But anyway, so let's get into some of the themes that I guess you see in here. Like, do you see anything that really sticks out to you other than just weirdness, or a little bit of growth, or like a little bit of like artificial family, a little bit? Yeah,
the family thing for sure. Like, again, I just really wanted to know what the heck happened with Earwig's mother and the band, because that was something where they kind of lead up to that. And because Earwig's mom was the lead singer, which in the dub they have Casey Musgraves as her voice, and she's a very good singer, and I thought that was a nice choice. Like, her singing was very good. The lyrics were kind of silly, but that happens when you translate, so like, I get it.
It's never perfect.
But, I mean, that's kind of a family theme, is the Mandrake and Bella Yaga.
Well, I mean, did you even see any themes, or were you just so focused on the story plot holes that you just couldn't figure out, like, if there was anything going on?
It's hard to say. I feel like the family, because Earwig she has in the orphanage her own family that she's kind of made. She's like the boss.
She's kind of the matron at that point, even though the matron of the orphanage isn't really in charge.
She's got her around her finger. Earwig does. And like the Earwig, she doesn't really seem to be upset at all that she never had a mom. Like, that doesn't bother her. There's no like looking for mom thing. And when she gets to the new family, it's not even like that I want to make this a family. It's I just want to get what I want. She's really kind of a selfish little brat.
She is a brat.
Like, and I think that's one reason that I didn't enjoy it, because sometimes you can play a character like that and they'll be plucky and confident. Or maybe they
kind of do the Eustace thing. And like, I'm talking Eustace from the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, from the C.S. Lewis one, where he starts as like a little turd, and then he eventually kind of grows into a better person, or at least learns that it's not all about him.
And that would have been nice to happen with Earwig, but it didn't. It just kind of, she gets what she wants. She suffers a little bit, then she gets what she wants still. And that it was just kind of like, I really hated her. She was such a little snot, and it was like I didn't feel like she grew as a person.
Let me ask you this: since you have just been like just straight up dumping on the film for most of that, what did you like about the movie? Or how about this? Who's your favorite character in the movie? Can I ask you that?
Probably the Mandrake.
Yeah, he was pretty fun.
He's just like. And this crotchety old hateful demon man.
He gets mad and his eyes just start running, smoke starts coming out of his ears, and then fire out of his head, and it's just great.
He just looks really silly.
He's super like fixated on food.
Yeah, and it's like whenever Bella Yaga insults the food.
Bring me the fish and chips from the pub down the road.
Yeah, and there's something that she's like, oh, we're having this again. And he's like, that is my favorite meal. And then she shuts up real fast. And it's just weird because it's like, what even is their relationship?
Yeah,
Like,
are they? They're not romantically involved. Yeah,
It's like,
it's
does
platonic.
She just serve him, and because then you see with flashback to the band that the Earwig's mom was trying to kiss him.
Yeah,
And so it's like, well, were they a thing? And
yeah,
it's just so. I feel like there were just a lot of holes. But
I think they're
all of that said,
yeah. I think
like,
he chose. Yeah, I think he chose the wrong things to put in the film to kind of fill out the story.
But, I mean that said, the animation is not bad. I personally just don't like CG, but I liked the colors and I thought the details were nice, and the music was good. Just if they could have elaborated and done more. And I think overall the fact that Gorō tried something new, that I like. Like I just, if I was around Gorō, I would like slap him on the back and say, you went like 50% in, like go 110, like
Yeah,
come on,
he definitely,
like, totally,
he definitely like
totally do your thing.
he
Come
definitely,
on,
he
be
definitely,
yourself.
yeah.
Don't be afraid. Like I feel like his wings were clipped from the beginning.
Well, I think
was
he
just-
hamstringed himself.
Yeah.
Because he was afraid, I think, honestly, which
And
to be fair, a lot of people
are
like, a lot of people can be like that. So, but anyways, so wrapping this up, because this is going to be kind of a shorter episode today, guys. We're just doing a quick little review on this.
Mm-hmm.
So, the release and the reception of the film obviously was mixed. I think it's originally was supposed to be released in at the 2020 Cannes Film Festival, but that was canceled obviously because of COVID. But then it was later on released at the Lumiere Film Festival in Lyon Metropolis on October 18th, 2020, and then later released in November 2020, or I'm sorry, December 30th, 2020, on Japanese television. And then again, it was released on July 7th through G Kids, I believe it's what it was, which was they did the distribution on that. And you actually
G-Kids
were,
is good
yeah,
stuff.
and you were able to see it on HBO Max on this last February, I believe, is when we saw it. So they released it on that. And obviously it's been released for Blu-ray and all that stuff. And they actually did the same thing. They actually released the Japanese theatrical version, which I don't know if that's longer. I don't know. I'm sure might be a difference there because it seemed a little different. But anyways, so obviously they had all the release. Toho did the big release in Japan and things like that because they do a lot of that stuff over there. But anyways, in regards to the reviews, I think between COVID hitting it and the fact that it had a theatrical release and also it also had the at-home release, I think there was stuff cut out of the home release. That's just me, because that's the only thing that could make sense to me. I haven't looked into it a lot, but I think that's kind of what happened. I think if we can get our hands on maybe a Japanese theatrical release, it might be a little longer. That's what I would think.
That might help because there were a lot of things that didn't make sense, and it wasn't a cultural issue.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like things were missing, is what it felt like.
Straight up, like it literally felt like things were cut out of the movie, removed, and then it was smushed together.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyways, that really hampered the critical reception and the commercial reception of the movie as well. So it sits at about a 33% of on Rotten Tomatoes. It's 5.2 out of 10. Yeah, it's basically saying this is a movie, and that's kind of what they said.
Can I read the quote you pulled?
Go ahead and put it. Yeah.
With a story as uninspired as its animation, Earwig and the Witch is a surprising and near total misfire for Studio Ghibli.
Yep, and that's why I said it's mixed to average reviews, and it just shows that not everyone, goes on all cylinders. It's kind of like with Walt Disney and Fantasia back in the day. It didn't make them any money. It was a big, just like step forward for them, and nobody really was into it.
I don't think that this.
But this
doesn't have that.
This is not going to come back and say, this is the greatest thing that they've ever made. No, I don't think this is ever.
I don't know that this will even get a cult following. It might. It's not bad enough to be like laughable because like bad movies can be so bad they're good. It's not like that.
The only thing I could think that could possibly save it is if they cut some stuff from the film that they still have either in the Japanese theatrical version or they have a full director's cut that they missed that they just didn't release, and that might be able to release and help save this a little bit, but I don't know.
It was a misfire, but again, I think you've got to be willing to take that leap to make any progress. So the fact that Gorō took that leap, I'm proud of him, and I want to commend him, and I want him to keep doing his own thing and don't be your dad, and that's okay.
Exactly.
That's my final thought on it.
I 100% agree with that. Like I said, he needs to try and step out of his father's shadow a little bit. He's starting to do that a little bit, but I think he just needs to completely do it and just step all the way out and just make something zany and something that he absolutely enjoys that's nowhere near connected to his dad.
I agree.
I think it's what he should do. And I think once he does that, I think he'll be his own person and it'll be his own hit, I think. So, and I think that's all about, but the thing is, that's all about growing up and becoming your own person. So, but anyways, Jackie, I want to say thank you for sitting with me for this brief period and just dumping on a film studio that we love and enjoy, but sometimes you have a few misfires here and there.
Well,
so
it makes me feel better because I make mistakes, and then it's like, it's okay to make mistakes.
Yep. But what do you do for mistakes? You learn from them and you get back up and you try again. That's what you do. That's the moral of the story. That's the moral of the story.
Amen. And
also, if you want to waste your time, go watch Earwig and the Witch. That's my opinion. So, yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
Anyways, guys, thanks for coming by, guys. We're going to head out of here today. And like I said, we might have a little break here in a little bit because of the new baby coming. But if hopefully we'll have a consistent schedule for a little bit, and James will come over, hopefully, once he feels a little better and get some episodes kicked out from you. I also might hear a little bit of, maybe Jackie will help me out a little bit. Maybe you might hear the little baby go, a little bit every once in a while. So anyways, guys, thanks for coming by. Again, if you like what you hear here, like and subscribe. Hit that notification button to let you know whenever we have new episodes weekly. And also check our back catalog. We're having a ton of stuff come out. And also probably about this time, we might have had a Pirates of the Caribbean episode from Not Your Father's podcast coming out that I went over and talked to him about. It's on movies 4 and 5 that we've already talked about in our episode of 1. It's going to probably be a lot of dunking, so we'll see how it goes. So either way, guys, thanks for coming by, and we will see you next week. Bye, Jackie.
Bye.
If you're interested in keeping up to date with new episodes on our channel, add us on any of your favorite podcasting apps, or subscribe to our YouTube channel at Seriously Pointless Conversations. If you have questions or concerns, please email us at seriouslypointlessconvo@gmail.com. We appreciate any feedback. Thank you for listening to our show.